Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you folks are doing well out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great beginning to your work week out there. Here to break down the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Monday. The big topic is going to be severe weather once again, significant severe weather across areas of the plains. But this is also going to extend into the Midwest. I mean, places like Chicago, even into like lower Michigan, run the risk of severe weather for today. Just note some of this information that I'm going to show you as far as the outlooks from the Storm Prediction Center could tweak a little bit, could change, and later outlooks throughout the day and updates that they will issue throughout the morning and the afternoon. So just want to let you guys know that. I will definitely put that in the community tab and under this video if they do make changes, substantial changes, as far as making these outlooks larger, bumping up the category risk and all those things. So we'll break down that in great detail. We'll have timestamps set up for the northern plains and areas of the Midwest as far as today's and tonight's severe weather event. And then tomorrow it's going to be its own deal. I have a timestamp up for that. Tomorrow has a shot to be very significant as of now, just an enhanced risk, but a very large enhanced risk. And I do think they will upgrade this to a level 4 out of 5 risk of severe weather, which would be a moderate risk. You'll see that in the red if they do that for you folks that aren't familiar with these outlooks from the Storm Prediction Center. But we will speak on that towards the end of the video. Of course, as always, for any new viewers, I know for people who tune in just about every single day, you know what I'm about to say. But for new viewers, my videos are very long, so definitely jump ahead if you want. Timestamps are set up throughout the video for you just to jump ahead to certain sections that you'll want to watch. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. I have a lot of comments to catch up with later on this afternoon, and this week is going to be incredibly active, incredibly busy with severe weather pretty much each and every day out ahead of us, including today and tonight. So let's get rocking and rolling. So a lot of moisture across the central portion of the country, especially the upper Midwest and the Midwestern states. Got a little bit of a swirl ongoing in Iowa, a lot of heavy rain, not much storm action. But there is some storms looking like they're heading right towards Milwaukee. Let me know what you're seeing in like southern Wisconsin with this rain and storm activity. More so just kind of moderate to heavy widespread rain activity all the way up into like northeastern sections of Minnesota. This rain is starting to enter the UP of Michigan as I speak right now. We even got some moisture already advecting across the Rockies into the northern plains right now, with this upper trough sort of draped across the central and northern Rockies, and then there's some energy down here that's going to get picked up already in the process of phasing and kind of slung across the southern Rockies, where I really think that is what's going to set up our severe weather threat for tonight, really more so into tomorrow. We do still got leftover activity from last night's action, which we ended up getting multiple tornadoes in Oklahoma. A few of them, I think most of them happening after the sun went down. Some storm chasers, a lot of storm chasers got that nocturnal tornado on film. And I mentioned yesterday morning that there was a shot, if we could get any individual supercells in northern Oklahoma, that there was going to be an increased risk of tornadoes. It was only a 5% risk yesterday, and it certainly ended up verifying and some. So I haven't heard much about damage. I definitely haven't heard about loss of life, but you guys in Oklahoma, Kansas, let me know what you're seeing this morning as far as the damage that was done. Some activity dancing around off the coast of Florida and the extreme southern tip of Florida. So definitely multiple things happening, multiple pieces of the puzzle showing up on radar this morning. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Dense fog across areas of the mid-Atlantic, southern northeast area. Severe thunderstorm watches continue. This might have expired already. I know Pivotal Weather's watches and warnings map sometimes is a little bit behind, but are still up according to this map in Oklahoma, but this will get dropped soon. We do have some winter weather alerts. Winter's still lingering around up here in the higher elevations, which isn't unusual here for mid to late May standards. But winter storm watch is up for the northern Rockies. Winter storm warnings already up for some areas in Montana, and then you got some winter weather advisories, the higher elevations in like Yellowstone National Park, Bighorn Mountains. And what's wild is we could have some snow flying around this area, but with some severe weather in extreme southeast Wyoming today, points east. Red flag warnings up for a lot of just energy advecting just north of this region, and typically this area just kind of gets hoodooed when it comes to moisture, when all this energy kind of ejects across the Rockies to the plains. So it's dry, it's windy. Certainly don't light any matches and throw them outside, or you'll start a wildfire. So we don't want that. Excessive rainfall outlook. Just a couple areas to watch for Well, excessive amounts of rain. You got a 5% risk in both of these areas in the green. 5% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles at any given point. So not a huge threat for this today, but we'll certainly watch out for it. The Storm Prediction Center. So as always, we take a broad look at this first, and then we're going to zoom into the highlighted region that's going to stand the best chance for severe weather today. So I do want to note, down here in Florida, there's a level 1 out of 5 risk. So if you're tuning in from Florida, South Florida, once again, you're going to run that risk of strong to severe storms for today. Miami points north. You will run that risk, level 1 out of 5, marginal risk. And then you have an enhanced risk, which, this outlook looks totally different than it did yesterday for today. If that makes sense. We only had a slight risk. Today was supposed to be kind of that in-between day between yesterday and tomorrow. Well, today has a chance to be significant, quite literally, also. So we have an enhanced risk right here in southwestern Nebraska, extreme northwestern Kansas, northeastern Colorado, and then we have a slight risk stretching from Cheyenne all the way to like the Sioux Falls, Sioux Cities region, just all the way to just south of Minneapolis, all the way down to Des Moines, Omaha, Lincoln. Guys, I could see the enhanced risk getting stretched a little bit further east because I do think multiple supercells will form in this slight risk area. It's just, what is your moisture return going to be like in this area initially? So we do have that slight risk that does extend into deeper and further areas of like southern or southern sections of western Kansas. Getting my words mixed up, but it does extend pretty far south into eastern Colorado. And then you got this other slight risk right in here. Level 2 out of 5, Milwaukee, Chicago, some higher populated regions. Marginal risk for a very large area. I do think the Great Lakes region, lower Michigan's going to run the risk of strong to severe storms today for sure. So let's take a more zoomed in look at this. Okay, just want to take a broad look at first just because we have other areas too, like in Florida, that do run the risk of severe weather. So there it is, North Platte, surrounding regions. It doesn't show a whole lot of towns and cities on this map because it's a much more broad look. But this is what we're looking at. Enhanced risk right into here, slight risk into here, marginal risk all the way back into lower Michigan. So what is this driven off of? Well, tornado outlook, and guys, this could increase. All right, as of now, 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. Way over here. I have a feeling that if you watch Storm Chaser feeds, there's a lot of great ones out there. We're probably going to get some photogenic tornadoes right before the sun sets this evening. I think the tornado threat really increases, and I'll talk about why here in a second. I think the tornado threat really increases right as the sun is setting out here. What we call OOZ. I think there'll be a couple hours, maybe 1 to 2 hours left of daylight. But, of course, way out here in this region, flat area, plateau, no mountains really, just some hills and just some flatter plateau regions. So this is definitely a lower populated regions. Of course, there's towns and cities, but, for a storm chaser's point of view when trying to get a tornado on film, this is where you would want it, out here in the plains. But, of course, if you're viewing, you're like, Mitch, what are you talking about? I live out here. It's definitely going to be a threat. Just know that, a risk of tornadoes out here. But look at this large 2% risk of tornadoes. Big area in green. There is a lot of real estate here, a lot of mileage that has at least a 2% risk of a tornado. So that lets me know that there probably is going to be changes in the outlooks. I think that you can have an extension of this. I also think there's a possibility you could have a 5% risk issued a little bit further into Iowa. I want to reiterate that. I do think there'll be some changes with this outlook in later updates. We'll see what happens, though. The severe wind outlook, it's certainly highlighted here in the red area. That means you have a 30% chance. This is really for southern southwestern Nebraska. 30% chance in the red area to see winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. In the yellow, 15% risk of that. And then notice there's a yellow area right over Milwaukee, Chicago, and then points west and southwest and even south. Okay? 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then you look in the black outline region, that means there's a 10% on its own, a 10% risk of significant severe winds, which in this case, is winds of 75 miles per hour or higher is possible. A 10% risk of it. In the black outline region, we call it a hatch risk. And then the hail outlook, okay? In the red, there is a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Yellow, a 15% risk of that. I could see changes with this also. And then we have the black outline region, the hatch risk. We have a 10% risk of significant severe weather, in this case being hail. So you have a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. I do think you'll have a shot at large hail to very large hail today for sure. And it could be a wind-driven setup like we saw in Kansas and Oklahoma last night. So that's a close look at the outlook for today. Now let's continue to move forward and look at what the radar could look like today. And we are going to take more of a broad look at this, but we're going to zoom into some of these areas for certain things here in a second. This morning, we do already have moisture across Wyoming, certain areas of the northern plains, which is pretty much this area right in here. As we continue to move closer to lunchtime, remember, back this up an hour or two depending on your time zone out here. Some people are in Central Time, some people a little bit an hour behind Central Time, a little bit further west. So, we're taking it to about 11 a.m. lunchtime at this point because this is in Eastern Time. And we're starting to get just some moisture out here, but I really don't think things start to really go downhill until around dinner time. You start to see this area of shower and storm activity more intense further south where there's just better moisture. Scattered shower activity up here in Montana. Not going to talk much on that. But as we start to move into about 8 p.m., check out these supercells, which, could be supercells. Are they going to be surface-bound supercells, meaning they're going to pose a tornado threat, or are they just going to be kind of elevated, meaning more of just hail producers, damaging wind producers, okay? You got to have surface moisture to be surface storms. Okay, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here in a second. But this is the wild thing about this, is how dynamic this storm system is. It looks like it's snowing in portions of some of the higher elevations of like Wyoming. I mean, it looks like it's snowing in the Black Hills based off the HRRR model around 7 to 8 p.m. Tonight. But you got supercells down here. I'm telling you, one or two of these supercells in northeast Colorado are probably going to produce a tornado. But you continue to keep this going, and this is when this could evolve into more of a significant wind threat. Look at this nasty complex of storms here in southwestern Nebraska around 9 to 10 p.m. You got this area of storms here in western Nebraska. You got these clusters of storms in eastern Nebraska that could produce all hazards. I think the tornado threat's definitely lower because you don't have as good lower moisture, surface moisture in place, higher dew points. When I say surface moisture, I mean like how humid it is outside. You need dew points in the 50s and 60s in this part of the country. You need them higher in other parts of the country, but here they don't have to be as high. But as we are starting to move into about midnight, you start to see these clusters, and we can go on and zoom in at this point because I do think once we get into later in the evening, the severe threat for Colorado begins to drop off some. So let's go on and just zoom into Nebraska so you guys can just get a better look at this here. All right, so, this is around 7, 8 p.m. Look at these little clusters of storms out here in central and eastern Nebraska. It's not going to be exactly where they're going to be, but they could be in these areas. And, you just got to watch these. Moisture's trying to bubble up into southern Nebraska. Already starting to get there in Kansas. Already certainly there. Southern counties in Kansas, you're starting to get a surge of moisture. This is going to try to feed into the southern flank of these storms, especially this one. So you want to watch for these clusters of storms in this region right into here. And then we keep these going, okay? And this is around midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning. Anything on the southern flank of these storms could produce a tornado. All this stuff up here, you're just lacking low-level moisture. It's more congealed. You're probably not going to get any tornadoes up here. Just gusty winds and a hail threat. Down here, they're going to ride some sort of, not really a boundary, but just basically sniff out that better low-level moisture. And these storms are going to just be more intense right in here, producing very large hail, a tornado risk, and the damaging winds. And these could cluster up into like a Boeing line of storms. We just got to watch this. So as we are starting to get certainly further into the wee hours of the morning, these storms will continue just to kind of rumble through Nebraska, and then I think by the time I'm waking up tomorrow morning, things will begin to simmer down somewhat, okay? So, we kind of go back to the Northern Plains outlook of this, and, certainly want to watch out here in southeastern sections of South Dakota, too. I mean, it's about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. These storms look quite intense, and then all this action begins to move into Iowa. And I think western Iowa, these storms could be quite intense for you guys, as you can tell. Later this evening, some supercells could develop produce very large hail, and then could produce some damaging winds. I just think you're lacking that thermodynamic as far as low-level moisture in this region, but we'll watch. I just think there'll be more elevated storm activity in this area. So we zoom into a couple things. I want to look at the updraft velocity swath from northeast Colorado, western Nebraska, and then points east. You notice it just likes this area right in here, central to southern Nebraska. So when you look at this, you say, hey, there's a spin in the atmosphere, okay, with a more vibrant, like reds, purples, and pinks and whites on this. The more whiter colors indicate a stronger updraft, purple colors. So stronger updrafts indicates very large hail, the shot at larger hail, and then rotation, a shot of a tornado. And just because you see a very highlighted area right over your neck of the woods here in Nebraska, that doesn't mean there's a 100% chance you're going to see a tornado. But no doubt about it, these storms will be rotating. And please, what is it, Akron, Colorado? I think that's how you pronounce it. I think that's the name of it. If you live in northeast Colorado, you might not get a drop of rain, but you might get a very photogenic and damaging tornado also. So, northeast Colorado, these storms are going to be quite intense a little bit earlier in the day. I'm not talking about like 2 or 3 o'clock. Earlier as in, maybe 7, 8, 9 p.m. And then all this action really begins to just extend all the way through Nebraska. But just note, there's going to be a lot of energy out ahead of this energy, creating a spin in the atmosphere, allowing for that. So definitely some rotating updrafts with this evening, no doubt about it, into the overnight hours. Now, what about winds in this area? Okay, this is more so for what's happening this morning, gusty winds, but watch how these storms get going, and you see how the colors highlight on your screen. This indicates gusty winds with these areas of storms. Now, the HRRR model isn't always on it with this, but I think it does a really good job at highlighting the area that runs the risk of significant winds. Wind gusts with some of these storms could approach 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. Last night it was a town in Kansas that had 100 mile per hour wind gusts, I believe. So I think it was Salina. I know y'all pronounce it different ways. That's where people say different things about that town in Kansas, but as far as how to pronounce it. But anyways, certainly some strong winds in northeast Colorado, southwestern Nebraska, western Nebraska, and these regions. So they will have, and I wish on Weather Bell there was a way to kind of look at the hail thing. You can on weathermodels.com, but you really just can't here. But there's going to be very large hail with these storms. So I do want to look at the ingredients with this, kind of what's driving this. And you'll notice this morning, it's not humid at all in western Nebraska, northeast sections of Colorado. Not a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. But look at this very moist air down here in Kansas, Oklahoma. Watch out as it tries to very slowly kind of inch into areas in Nebraska this morning. And, for example, about midday today, the entire southeastern section of Nebraska, very moist. All the way up into Iowa, very moist conditions. And I would say any storms of those supercells that do develop kind of more in this moist air in Iowa and Nebraska, the higher possibility of them producing a tornado. If they kind of develop more so in these dew points in the 50s, maybe not so much, maybe more elevated. They'll be ingesting more dry and cool air. But some storms will be trying to pop up around this area. So there is a lack of really good thermodynamics, but they're certainly still there. It's still supportive. So I know there's only a 2% risk of a tornado in this area, but I could see that increasing for this region right in here. We'll see what happens. But as we start to get into the evening, the Storm Prediction Center mentions in this area, hey, tornado threat could increase for this area of Nebraska around OOZ, which is this evening. And this is because you get this nose of better low-level moisture to the south of this boundary. Remember, those storms are forming right in here in Nebraska. Look at these dew points in the 60s. That is definitely supportive, especially the further west you get in general across the lower 48 for tornadoes as far as a thermodynamic atmosphere. Better low-level moisture, better CAPE levels. So you're certainly going to have an increased tornado threat as you're getting closer to the end of the day, and honestly, as the sun is beginning to set. So as these storms sort of ride this boundary, anything on the southern side, which is the better moisture, is going to have a tornado threat. But if you notice up here in like central to northern Nebraska, dew points in the 40s and 50s, that's not going to get, the tornado threat really going here. So you notice this favorable area of low-level moisture, dew points in the 50s and upper 50s certainly is supportive for tornado activity. I know you're thinking, well, that's not going to get the job done in the south. Well, it's not, because the south is in lower elevations than, you know, out here in the northern plains. You're on a plateau, you're a few thousand feet up, if not more, depending on your location. The higher up you get, the less moisture in the atmosphere you need thermodynamic wise for severe weather. There's a reason for that, but we're not going to spend 5 minutes on that here. So if we look at the tornado parameter, you can see how it responds to that better low-level moisture as we get into 7, 8, 9 p.m. Look how the significant tornado parameter spikes. These numbers begin to spike. Higher the number, the better ingredients for tornadoes. So that's why I think if you live in Nebraska, I really think the tornado threat increases as you start to get, you know, after dinner time. Once you start to lay the kids down for bed in this area, you're certainly going to have an increased tornado threat in this region. Okay, so be mindful of that for sure. And it really increases as we get into the overnight hours. I do think there'll just be an ongoing tornado threat. Now, my folks here in the upper Midwest, including Chicago, Milwaukee, they do run that slight risk. There's that spin going on in Iowa right now. As we start to get to about mid to late morning, the atmosphere will begin to recover in this region. All right, some thunderstorms will develop in like western Illinois, southern Wisconsin. You see these splotches of orange and reds, strong to severe storms. By the time you get to about lunchtime, 1 p.m., storms are making their way through southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and I think as early as like lunchtime, 1, 2 p.m., Milwaukee down to Chicago, maybe as far north as Green Bay. You can have a line of strong to severe storms that rumble through. I don't think this is going to be anything too crazy, but there is going to be that isolated tornado threat with this. It does show more energy kind of firing up behind this, and this will just kind of rumble through, you know, some higher populated areas, you know, Chicago to Milwaukee. And then this energy will try to get going again after it crosses over Lake Michigan. So this is around 6, 7 p.m. You got some isolated cells across lower Michigan. Not exactly sure where they're going to be. But you see these kind of storms down here in areas of Illinois, eastern Illinois, getting into northern Indiana. You guys could get some storms later on this afternoon, this evening, 6, 7 p.m. And then we're probably going to get a line of storms that sweeps through lower Michigan. But don't ignore the tornado threat with anything that you're seeing popping up here, guys. Even along this line, you cannot ignore the tornado threat. I know it's only 2%, but it's there. But these storms will continue to cruise across lower Michigan. They might miss the UP of Michigan altogether, but we'll see what happens. And then I want you to notice there's storms up here in northwestern Wisconsin, eastern Minnesota also. These also have a very small shot to produce a tornado. Not as much moisture up here, but still a shot. Okay, and then you see these storms in northern Iowa. Not as much moisture in northern Iowa as there is southern Iowa at the surface, but there's still some. I mean, we've seen wedge tornadoes with dew points in the 50s in Iowa before, easily. But we start to get closer to midnight. I do think there'll just be some scattered downpours, maybe some storm activity across the Midwest down here. And then we're just going to continue to get some storms overnight. I mean, look at this cell kind of creeping up on Des Moines. You just want to watch all this. And then we're kind of waking up tomorrow morning, and this is going to set the stage for a big day tomorrow across some of these areas that you're seeing here, a lot of these areas. Waking up to a lot of shower and storm activity across areas of the upper Midwest. So what about that updraft helicity swath that we talk about? Indicates rotation with these updrafts and just stronger updrafts, hail threat, wind threat. Well, it likes this corridor right through here. Okay? You're going to have some storms that are spinning across Iowa, the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, into lower Michigan. And then it shows some rotation, some rotating updrafts up here, where Wisconsin and Minnesota meet. So I'm telling you, large area real estate does at least run a small risk of tornadoes. So just keep that in mind, guys, for sure. And, you know, you look at the wind outlook, there is going to be a shot at damaging winds with this line of storms that gets going later on this morning. What kind of strengthens later on this morning across the northern half of Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and, you know, extends all the way into like northern Indiana, all the way into lower Michigan. In fact, this looks like it really intensifies as it starts to get into lower Michigan, where you could potentially have wind gusts based off the HRRR model gusting to 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. I mean, look in the lower half of lower Michigan. So certainly take the wind threat serious. There is a threat of hail too. Like I said, to round this off, we'll go back and look at this, right? I do think this is going to tweak some. I think we potentially could have the extension The slight risk might connect right in here. Slight risk might get extended into lower Michigan. Enhanced risk might tweak some. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Your threat of severe weather could increase. I don't see it decreasing for anybody. I only see it increasing today in today's setup. Okay, so let's break down the rest of the lower 48, and then we'll move into tomorrow's severe weather threat. So the southeast today, much more quiet, very comfortable conditions, especially like in the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia. Some lower humidity for sure. Kind of makes you, I know my summer fans are going to be booing the heck out of me, but days like this kind of make you, long for those September kind of first cold front of the season days, and once you start to get into late summer, early fall. But it'll kind of have that feel out there today. But as far as showers and storms, the only area I'd watch out for is down here near, I would say Fort Lauderdale down to Miami. I mean, you guys could see a strong severe storm or two. Had hail in the Bahamas yesterday. You typically don't see hail in down there, but you had some cold air aloft, and so like an airport in the Bahamas had very small hail. It's pretty wild to see. I will say there's a shot at a scattered and isolated, I would say, shower or storm here in the western North Carolina area, extreme northeastern Georgia. Could pop up, drift around, and then diminish maybe into the overnight hours. But it does show some lingering shower activity kind of in North Georgia tonight. So, up there near Helen, North Georgia, Pickens, South Carolina, Clemson, South Carolina, could get some showers, very possible. But outside of that, very quiet weather across the southeast. Northeast, same thing. Finally don't have to deal with these pesky showers. Guys, it's going to be a pretty warm week. I think Boston has a shot to flirt with 90 degrees sometime this week. So today will be the first of the kind of the warm stretch of days. You're definitely going to warm up fast. I mean, so kind of, if you're a warm weather fan, definitely be happy about that. But the Northeast, as far as this afternoon, not a whole lot going on. Could get some isolated showers and storms in the southern tier of New York. Cannot rule that out one bit. Some energy will be moving into southern Ontario, maybe areas of Quebec as we get into the overnight hours. Can't rule out some showers in extreme northern Maine. And then as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we are waking up to some scattered downpours, maybe across western New York State down to the Finger Lakes. But all in all, a pretty nice day across the Northeast. We get down to the south central U.S., much quieter compared to yesterday. I have a shot to really clean up across Oklahoma if there was any extreme damage done. You guys let me know what you're hearing in Oklahoma about those tornadoes last night. But most of the action, guys, is going to remain up in Nebraska. There's that nasty supercell showing up in northeast Colorado. I'm telling you, just be aware of that up there. The tornado threat increases as we're getting closer to, the sun setting tonight. But we getting into the overnight hours, folks, and there's that low pressure ejecting across the plains in the middle of the night to the wee hours of the morning. But, the southern plains, south central U.S., very quiet weather today. A nice day. It's warming up. Nothing to really speak on at all. North central U.S., we've already covered all this, but there's a lot going on. Different areas could see different things. Look at all those mini little supercells trying to form in Iowa. Will they be kind of surface bound? Okay. Surface bound storms, or will they be more elevated storms? We just got to figure that one out. Where's the best moisture going to be in Nebraska and Iowa? But we are pretty confident in this complex of storms surging through lower Michigan and just scattered action everywhere. But as we get into the overnight hours, like after midnight, just a huge area of showers and storms really surge across areas of the north central U.S. into the Midwest, all the way eventually into the Great Lakes region. And then tomorrow, with this low you see down here, this will set the stage for a significant severe weather event for our Tuesday. Western U.S. Other than the northern Rockies, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, portions of Washington State, seeing some scattered shower, higher elevation snow activity. Most of the southern Rockies, central Rockies is pretty quiet. With the phasing of this shortwave down here in the eastern Pacific and the main upper trough, you could have some passing showers through Arizona, maybe oozing into northwestern New Mexico. Utah could see some shower activity, Colorado also, but I think most of your confined moisture is going to be up here in the northern Rockies, where you could get some, accumulating snow in those winter storm warning, winter storm watches, winter weather advisory areas across Wyoming, Montana, etc. So eventually this all moves out. We start to see another system enter the picture here in the form of some rain. widespread rains moving into western Washington state, but that's getting into tomorrow, more so into kind of the wee hours of the morning tomorrow. So temperatures, I think you're going to deal with a chilly day in Boston, but not for long. Okay, you only got to go about an hour or two. I know I always mention Boston at this time of the year with temperatures because you guys, it just takes forever, because if you get a little bit of an onshore flow, the immediate metro area stays cool, but you work your way about 2 hours west, guys, you get into the 60s and 70s. Don't worry, warm conditions are really coming as we get deeper into the week. But in general, a pretty nice day. A little bit of a return flow is what's kind of bringing in some more dry, comfortable air in some cases, downright cool in others. But you get away from this return flow, and this will eventually get away from us. We start to warm up steadily this week across everybody in the eastern U.S., but pretty nice across the Ohio Valley, Mid-South, Deep South, getting warm again, 80s, low 90s, and then it's just getting downright hot in western Texas. I think someone in Oklahoma will hit 100 degrees a day in western Oklahoma, and very dry conditions, though. It's not like a humid heat, more of a dry heat, but warm once you get away from the cloud cover and moisture still. But, central and northern Rockies, cooler air associated with this troughing in place, this lower pressure. So that's temperatures. Now we get into tomorrow's risk, guys. Enhanced risk. And I know there's a lot of people in the weather community wondering, well, why haven't they upgraded this to a moderate risk? Well, I think they're just holding off because they really want to figure out the certain areas that have the highest risk of severe weather. But I do think there's no doubt about it, they are probably going to issue a moderate risk for something in this area. And I could see it being for winds and them keeping a 10% risk of tornadoes. We'll have to see what happens. But let's talk about this really quick. One thing I want to note, there is a risk of strong to severe storms as the kind of the low pressure that's going to bring all the severe weather today into tonight kind of heads off into kind of Canada, and then we'll bring a risk of severe weather across interior New England. But let's focus on this. Huge enhanced risk from central Wisconsin, extend through all of southeastern Minnesota. Includes a good chunk of Iowa. I won't say all of it, but about all of central and eastern Iowa, northwestern Illinois, and then pretty much the entire northern half of Missouri, including a very small section of Nebraska and eastern sections of Kansas. Kansas City included in this, St. Louis not quite, Peoria, Milwaukee around the fringe, almost all the way up to Green Bay. I think I said Des Moines already, Ames. I mean, you guys, enhanced risk. Slight risk from Oklahoma City all the way up to Marquette, the UP of Michigan. This extends all the way into lower Michigan. A lot of real estate, guys. I do think on the southern mode of this could be extremely intense thunderstorms, but I do think it's very conditional. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So what is this driven off of? We already have a 10% hatch risk of tornadoes, meaning not only in the yellow area do you have that 10% risk of tornadoes, you also have a 10% risk in this case of strong tornadoes, EF2 or higher. And I really think this will be right where the triple point is met into here. Brown area, 5% risk of tornadoes. Includes Chicago to Milwaukee, Peoria, Springfield, down to Kansas City. Yeah, almost all the way up to Minneapolis. 2% risk in the green. This could upgrade to a 15% risk will be the next category upgrade as far as the tornado outlook. Okay, wind outlook, 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in this red area. Yellow area, a 15% risk of that. The hatch risk right into here, that means there's a 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. Okay, so there's a risk of significant winds in this case. So this is definitely going to be a big wind threat. I could see this increasing with this. There's a possibility of another derecho in this case. That D word I don't mention much. Some people say derecho, some people say derecho. But what that basically is, and you can Google it too, but is basically a damaging line of storms, a line of storms producing damaging winds in excess of 90 to 100 miles per hour. And this area certainly can get it sometimes. Houston got it a couple days ago. I'm not sure if they're going to classify yesterday's line of storms one, but maybe they already have and I missed it somewhere. But anyways, the hail threat, not a hatch risk in the red, just a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Yellow area, 15% risk. So that's the outlook for tomorrow. And just taking a wide look at how this can unfold, I promise you tonight we will zoom into this and we'll talk about it as far as zooming into individual states. But we're going to wake up to a big mess tomorrow across Iowa, Minnesota, surrounding states. There's a lot of little things going on, a lot of big things going on. One, tomorrow about late morning, midday, intense line of storms could be rumbling through southwestern Wisconsin. Same thing with Iowa. Line of storms could be making its way out of eastern Nebraska into western Iowa. Okay, and then we start to get into tomorrow afternoon. You still got the same thing ongoing. Line of storms just continuing to chug through Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin, down to northern and central Iowa. And then you got to watch these cells right in here. Watch what happens as we start to get into, I would say, 6, 7, 8 p.m. You start to get the development of kind of a line of broken supercells. And all these supercells right in here, let's back it up 1 hour. These have the capability of producing not only tornadoes, but strong tornadoes across Iowa, central and eastern Iowa. And then there's that tornado risk also on the southern flank of all this convection that you're seeing, shower and storm activity in southern Wisconsin. But I want you to notice is look how these storms pop up in northeast Oklahoma, down here near Springfield and Columbia, Missouri. These will have the capability of producing some nasty weather too, but this thing gets a tilt to it because the surface low is way up here. You don't have as much forcing in the atmosphere lift, but you're going to have basically a line of storms going across the Midwest. But they could be slow movers down here, and the chance of them developing is a little bit lower, but still high. I mean, the HRRR model is already showing. Look at this individual cell in northern Texas. So intense storms in this entire region. The timing, we got to figure that one out. This is around 9 p.m., and all this energy will basically cruise into lower Michigan, Indiana. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Look at all these storms near and just south of St. Louis, near Fayetteville, Arkansas. So these will obviously lose some intensity as we start to move deeper into tomorrow night. But, I mean, guys, the ingredients are there. I mean, this is your low-level moisture, your dew points, and we'll kind of work our way through this a little bit quickly here. And we'll take it all the way to the prime, the prime heating of the day. I mean, you got pools of dew points in the 70s, so much more favorable thermodynamics today. Tomorrow compared to today. I don't buy this weird little void and moisture right here, but look near this boundary. Dew point surging into the upper 60s, low 70s. So you certainly have a ripe, a moist atmosphere. And I know I'm not showing areas for the south and southwest. I'll show you all that tonight's video, but we'll just solely focus on tomorrow, and that's it. But very moist atmosphere in place, right? And then you look at your CAPE levels in response to your higher dew points. And as we're starting to make our way, if this would get a move on, we're starting to make our way into this tomorrow afternoon. Keep wanting to say this afternoon. CAPE levels well over 2,000, 3,000 joules per kilogram. Look at this little boundary in Wisconsin. I mean, even if you had 1,000 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE, that would be supportive for tornadoes. So a ton of fuel in the atmosphere driving this right ahead. And then the storms form, eat up all the fuel in the atmosphere. Okay? And then you look at your kinematics, all right? Your low-level jet. This thing will be fueled by a deepening surface low right here in Iowa, sections of southern Minnesota. So you're going to have this southerly low-level jet pulling in all those low-level kinematics. Winds closer to the surface, about a mile above our heads, that are going to put a spin in the atmosphere. It's going to aid in that damaging wind threat. I mean, this is an intense low-level jet approaching 40 to 50 knots. And the winds are just whipping about a mile above our heads. Like I said, really driving all hazards, especially the tornado threat and then the wind threat throughout this region. So, no doubt you got a large area of real estate that's going to run that risk of significant severe weather. And then you got tomorrow's threat. I'm getting my days all mixed up. Let me slow down. We got Wednesday's threat also. A huge, weird-looking slight risk all the way from Cleveland, almost Detroit, all the way to central Texas. Okay? We could get an upgrade to an enhanced risk with this. And then we have Thursday's severe weather threat. And I think we're going to have more severe weather risk into Friday and Saturday too. But this could be a higher end storm threat too here in the coming days. We just got some time to figure this one out. But for Thursday, still in that same area for Thursday, a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in a given location. Stay tuned for tonight. I have you a detailed video about tomorrow. God bless all y'all. Stay safe across the plains. And talk to you soon.